Ever finish a horror game or movie? And, like, the scares really stick with you, you know what I mean? Get under your skin.
Oh, yeah.
That lingering feeling of dread. That's what we're diving into today with Silent Hill 2.
Good one to dive into.
Like,
Especially with the remaster, right? People are experiencing it again, maybe for the first time.
it's so interesting how Silent Hill 2 achieves that. It's not just about jump scares.
No, not at all.
It's the psychological stuff.
Exactly, and that's what makes it so effective, I think.
Yeah,
It gets under your skin in a way that a lot of horror just doesn't.
for sure. We've got this article from, let me see, The Dark Side of. They make a really good point about the game using atmosphere and story to, like, really get that chilling experience. What are your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. The way Silent Hill 2 builds that atmosphere, the dread, the unease, it's incredible. It lets your imagination run wild, which, frankly, can be way scarier than anything a game could show you directly.
Right. It's like it's tapping into something more primal, more psychological.
Exactly. It's about what you don't see, what you don't know.
Now, the article also touches on this comparison to Gothic literature, which I found fascinating. Do you see those parallels as well?
Oh, absolutely. The use of setting, for example, the way Silent Hill 2 creates this sense of isolation, of being lost in this oppressive, decaying world.
Yeah.
It's very reminiscent of Gothic literature.
It's true. Now that you mention it, the fog and desolation the article mentions, they're almost like staples of the Gothic aesthetic, aren't they?
For sure, for sure. And I think in Silent Hill 2, it goes beyond just aesthetics. That fog, that desolation, it reflects James's mental state.
Wow, that's a really good point. It's like the environment becomes a manifestation of his internal struggles.
Exactly, and that's where the symbolism comes in, which I think is another parallel to Gothic literature.
Okay, so let's talk about that symbolism a bit because Silent Hill 2 is full of it. It's interesting, though, because the game doesn't hit you over the head with it, right?
Mhm.
It's more subtle, open to interpretation.
Right. It's not trying to spoon-feed you the answers, and that's what makes it so compelling, so unsettling.
It trusts the player to engage with those deeper themes, to draw their own conclusions.
Exactly. It's a horror game that respects your intelligence, and that's rare.
It really does make you think, what makes certain horror stick with us?
Yeah, it's not always the most obvious things.
It kind of goes back to something the Dark Side of article brought up, this trend in newer horror games, you know, with the hyper-realistic graphics.
Well, right, right.
Like, is there a point where that much realism, I don't know, takes away from the psychological aspect?
It's interesting. I mean, visually, those games can be, like, unbelievably intense. But the article made a point about desensitization, especially for younger players.
Yeah, and I thought that was really important.
If you're exposed to that level of, I guess, graphic content all the time, could it lessen the impact of real-world violence, suffering? I don't know. It's something to consider for sure.
It's a tough one, right? Because I don't think anyone's saying we should censor games or anything like that.
Right.
But maybe there's a responsibility to be, I don't know, mindful of the potential impact, especially with younger audiences.
Yeah, absolutely. It's about finding that balance, I think. Because on the one hand, yeah, there's a responsibility.
Yeah.
But games can also be an outlet, a way to explore those darker things in a safe space.
Yeah,
right?
no, for sure, for sure. I mean, that's part of what draws us to horror in the first place, that kind of safe exploration of fear and what scares us.
And, you know, for me, the games that have stuck with me the most, they've always been the ones that, like, really tapped into that psychological element.
It's about more than just the surface level, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like you were saying, the games that really get under your skin, they make you think. And with Silent Hill 2, that's something I've heard from so many people, you know? That feeling like it sticks with you.
It's true. I think that's a testament to the power of psychological horror, right?
For sure. It's not easily forgotten.
It makes you question things, makes you think about things you maybe don't want to think about.
Exactly. And it makes you wonder, if you go too far in that other direction, like just focusing on the visual, the gore, does something get lost?
Yeah, potentially.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a place for that kind of horror too, of course. But I think when the focus shifts solely to that visual shock, it can become, I don't know, a bit one-dimensional.
Right. Like you're
Yeah.
just trying to outdo the last scary image.
Exactly. There's only so far you can push that before it just becomes, well, kind of empty.
It loses its depth.
Exactly. And that's where I think Silent Hill 2 really shines, because it's exploring these universal themes: guilt, loss, trauma.
It's tapping into something much deeper and more human, something we can all relate to on some level.
Absolutely.
Makes you wonder what the next Silent Hill 2 will be, you know? As games keep evolving, what's going to be that next game that pushes the boundaries of horror in a way that's not just about, you know, how realistically they can render blood splatter?
Right. That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because technology is going to keep advancing. So will it be even more psychological? Will it be something we haven't even imagined yet? Who knows?
It's exciting to think about. Well, I think that's a good place to leave it for today, with everyone wondering about the future of horror. Thank you so much for diving into this with me. It's been fascinating.
My pleasure. Always happy to talk horror, especially a game like Silent Hill 2.
For sure. And for everyone listening, keep those brains buzzing. And until next time, thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.